Hello, hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. We're gonna get started in just a couple of minutes. I'm just finishing off some feedback now, some notes. Good to see you here, McVal. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Hello, Lily. Doing good. Just gonna get started here in just a couple of minutes. Quickly check. I think I did some preliminary notes for like most of the entries today. Check some stuff. Hello, Long Pig. Hello, Charlie. Hello, Coleman. Coleman, it's been a while since I've seen you in here. Welcome back. Charlie. Charlie. Such an old meme. That dated me by just one sentence. Okay, Charlie, you forgot the tag. Let me swoop you in here. Let me get that set up for you. Do it on the fly. Ole, Greg. Oh no, I was thinking about like Charlie bit my finger. But that is like, oh my god, that is so old. Like, Jesus. That's ancient. That's like dinosaur times, you know? Okay. Let's get that in here. Hello, Sheila. Hope you're doing well. Hope the project is progressing nicely. I'm gonna switch it up in just a minute. Old Greg was disturbing. I don't think I've ever heard about that one. You know, like with most of those things, like I'm very visual. So whenever someone says like, "Oh, this thing," I'm like, "Could be," and then you show it to me, and it's like, "Oh, fuck yeah, of course. How could I forget?" Think to go. Maybe another time then. I'll have to do some research after the stream, you know. All right. Let's switch things on over. Let me dim down the music a little bit. Research purposes. All right. Let's get into the swing of things. Hope everyone is doing well. I've been having, I want to say good week, but that would be a lie. It's not a bad week either. It's just like a lot of shenanigans happening with tech and program issues, and it's just like, ugh. Just, you know, I don't know if you have those weeks when you're like, I'm really hyped to get back into the swing of things, and then you want to get into the swing of things, but nothing lets you because it's just one problem after the other, and it's just like day in, day out, just fucking annoyances. Sorry about my swearing. Stop doing that, but it's just been one of those weeks, you know? One of those weeks. My life at the moment. Just outsource it. What, like outsource my life? Like, what am I gonna do then? What am I gonna do? Yeah, it's been one of those weeks. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'm compensating by doing a lot more work for the server and all that kind of stuff. So as you've all seen, we've got like new roles, we've got new achievements, we've got new role icons and all that kind of stuff. Having a lot of fun with designing those. There's still a lot of stuff that we need to put into place for it. Well, not a lot of stuff to be put into place, but like trackers on the back end. So yeah. Yeah, the badges. Exactly. I do like him. I do really like him, especially because they're also like, I don't know, 5 pixels on your screen, you know, like at most. So yeah, it's fun designing those though. It's also more, the reason why we did that is because we wanted to incentivize people to help each other out, right? So I think the most important one in there is, well, we got the team challenge ones, right? Which are really cool. And we're going to tie that into the whole team challenge itself, which is going to be awesome. But I think the most important one there is the community mentor, where if you help other people out, like you get like, yeah, you just get like a nice little badge for doing so, right? Trying to put like an emphasis on helping each other out in the community. Really cool. So yeah, that's why they're there. We got some other ones as well, just to keep some achievements going. We're probably gonna have some additional ones, like people were asking today for minutes spent in voice chat, which is a thing. So we could introduce something like that. Also, total messages sent and all that kind of stuff. But that is, they are nice, but it's not something that we want to like put an emphasis on, you know. So we'll probably keep that a little bit more hidden, or like maybe make it achievement that you get somewhere else. We'll see. We're gonna iterate on the system and then see how it goes. So if you have any feedback for this kind of stuff, if you go to our community engagement section, feel free to drop your ideas or suggestions or whatever. Drop that in there. Really awesome. I have a bad signal. I'll come back in a bit. Okay, sounds good. See you in a bit. Number of pet pictures on the pet channel. I mean, that's not a bad one. I do like that one. I do have to say, I'm kind of disappointed that I can't include myself on the leaderboard because I feel like it keeps me accountable as well. I'm kind of sad about that. But yeah, number of pet pictures on the pet channel. That would be an interesting one. Yeah. Okay, let's make a note of that. I'm just gonna dump it in the suggestions. So Let me add that in here. That's good. Let me add that in there. Achievement with rarity achieved. That for some reason. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff that we can do with that. And the long-term goal is that also I do want to reward people for like achieving certain roles or achievements or whatever, right? I think that could be really cool, where we can then, I don't know, tie it into some rewards or some. We'll see. Cool. Cutest pet achievement would start a war. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Hello Slate. Hello Joe. Good to see you both here. Hope you're both doing well. Yeah, that's been going on. We are really ramping up when it comes to the production of the course right now. We kind of have show you some stuff. So we have a new one that kind of went live. Released like a new chapter on low poly modeling, which actually came out like pretty nice. We still need to do some polish work on this one, but I might show it. Do that very often. So let's see. See if we can switch over here. Wait then. Cool. All right. So let's switch it on over. Got this new course, new section of the course by Ben McDonald, senior environment artist. Awesome to have him on here. We've done a bunch of videos. I've edited all the images, so it's coming together like really nicely. There's still some stuff that we need to edit, just because we don't want to step on people's toes. But yeah, this is one of our newest lessons that just got published. Still with the idea that at the end of the year we're gonna start onboarding people onto this, maybe even earlier. Right now the plan is to scale up to having, I think the current plan is 5 lessons at the same point in development. So we're currently scaling that up. So yeah, got all that stuff in here. We've got all the videos edited as well. These ones need to be polished a little bit too, but that's video, already been done. Yeah, it kind of goes through like modeling techniques, what to be careful of, triangulation, like how to get good topology, what the different modifiers are, all that kind of stuff. There's going to be like a bunch of good stuff in here. And then we still need to set up the exercise. And that is just an example of one of the things we're building. Let's go to the overview. So it is still being worked on, but it's been a while since I've shown this. So most of this stuff is currently in production. And we have some additional stuff in here as well. So it is honestly right now we're going into like full production. Is there going to be one about high poly modeling? Yes. So that will be here. So here we have one about high poly modeling. Yeah, that will be worked on pretty soon as well. That will be done by Ben too. So Ben is currently taking a little bit of a break because it's getting busy over on his side, and then we'll have him back to talk about high poly modeling. At least that's the current plan. And then we have like all these lessons that we still need to finish in the back catalog. And then I'm currently still working on like all the art fundamentals as well. So it is honestly full steam ahead. It feels like a lot of stuff is in progress in the background and hasn't made it to the site yet, but it's going to be cool to see them all coming in there. Also a bit of sculpting. Yeah, we do plan on talking about like organic modeling. So that will entail sculpting and all that kind of stuff too. That will probably be covered in the environment art specialization, because this is supposed to be like an introduction to the core of it, right? So high to low poly modeling, baking, texturing, your first introduction to your game engine, all that kind of stuff, like the basic principles. And then we're gonna dive into what is specific to environment art, and then we're gonna be breaking that out in all its specializations, like an overview of the different things that we're gonna do. You can see like there's terrain creation, terrain material creation. We're currently finishing off a intro to foliage creation. So that goes over like what kind of biomes are there, like how to research kind of stuff. Yeah, we have a bunch of cool stuff in progress. But yeah, that is currently in progress. Expect to see. We honestly need to get into a flow of getting like regular updates to the community to this. And we're thinking about onboarding people in, depending on how quick we get these ones done, we're probably going to onboard like our first batch of people to then give feedback on already. Is it going to be a section on hard surface stuff? Yes. We have 2 sections. One talks about subdivision modeling, and one talks about what was the other one about again? They've been in progress for a while, so let's see. They're not necessarily for the track that we're going to release first, but they have been made, which is thing. Yeah, because I do know that we had one about vision model, Boolean one, well, I think. Can't find it right now, but yeah, we're definitely gonna go into like hard surface too. This is really gonna be a one-stop shop for game art. Well, it's supposed to be. It honestly is supposed to be like the site, or like the academy for like if you just want to do like game art, but it's gonna be, like a self-driven course, right? Like we want to just give you like the framework, and then you can work your way through the framework and explore different things. Because right now, what it does look like, it looks like a linear track. However, the more we're gonna add on to this, the more we're gonna have like breakups and little side quests or side explorations, call it. So for example, for environment art, we're also going to be talking about level design and a little bit of concept art, you know, just like to explore those like adjacent topics as well. But yeah, just wanted to give a little bit of an update. Expect more on all this stuff soon. We keep you as well. Yeah. Let's see. We got some questions in the chat. Thank you so much for the questions. Let's have a look. Again. Where's everything? Everything got scrambled now. Any plans on the pricing? So for the self-guided track, we don't have a final price yet, but we want it to be approachable. Right? So there are some other, like, the whole reason why we're doing this is because I personally feel that there is a big gap between, first of all, the experience that is currently being taught in most universities, not all of them, because some of them do a really good job at pulling in industry talent, but the ones that don't, they have a massive gap in what they offer their students, right? So that's where we see like a gap in what we can offer them. However, that also means that we don't want to go crazy with like the pricing either. So we kind of hope to, we kind of have 2 tiers to the whole thing. So one would be a guided track, which is going to be more expensive. So you'll have mentors and like a system and all that kind of stuff. And then we have like a self-guided track, where you can just like explore by yourself, do the whole self-learning thing with like minimal interference from us. And then we'll probably put in some mechanisms where you can call on us for help if needed, but we'll see about that. So, we just talked a little bit about like the upcoming course, Charlie. Art fundamentals is exciting. Yeah, I enjoy the stuff that I'm writing on art fundamentals. I've written a lot about color theory. I think the next thing is going to be about like scale and proportions. I'm also writing about like visual storytelling and all that kind of stuff too. So I have like a big back catalog that I need to work my way through. But yeah. Coleman is asking, wow, will this touch on everything covered in the environment art handbook, basically? Yeah, I mean, the benefit about the environment art handbook was that it was like bite-sized stuff, right? So it was just little tips and tricks that I've gathered along the way. But the idea is that this course would be a fundamental knowledge on all the topics, and then I kind of see the PDF as like an additional thing to the course. Because what we do want to offer with the pricing, right? Who brought that up before? Slade was talking about the pricing. What we do want to do is we want to bundle everything together, right? So if you have access to the course, then we're also going to give you access to the workshops and the PDF and all the other stuff that we do. So it becomes like massive in its value, right? In its value proposition. It's not published yet, no. So like to repeat, like the current plan would be that we start onboarding an early test group in the beginning to just get some feedback and get some iterations going. And we're planning to do that in a couple of months. So like at the end of the year, we're probably gonna be onboarding a bunch of people. And then we'll do like early access periods where people can go into it. Like we'll open it up progressively, babe. When is the course live? Yeah, we basically just answered that, Charlie. So, but yeah, that would be basically the idea, right? Because we know that there's a lot of really good resources out there, right? Like I don't think there's a lack of resources. It's just the resources are not connected in any way. What we want to do is we want to build this course as a connective tissue between all the resources that we create, but then also publicly available resources from other people, so that we can kind of build like a spider web of just like, hey, look, we recommend going to this resource, and then maybe this resource, pick that up if you want to do some extracurricular stuff, right? Which is kind of what I feel is missing. So I don't know, why did you guys develop this, and how is this better than uni or other courses? Well, first of all, it's not going to be as expensive. And I really believe that we are going to be way more flexible in what we can offer, compared to traditional unis. So that's basically why I'm doubling down on like a modular system, right? So the modularity of it is where we chunk up like all the lessons, so that if we're missing some knowledge, we can just add that to the lesson or make it an additional lesson to it. And it gives us like a lot of flexibility, where the main thing is that we're not beholden to like a structure necessarily. We just want to give you all the information if you want to get like, you want to become like a really good artist, right? That is really what we plan to focus on. And then when it comes to other courses, so with other courses, what usually happens is that it's not that we're trying to be a replacement, but it's that we're trying to do something differently, right? Because with most courses, it is like you have one teacher that takes you through one course and that is it, right? It is usually very niche, very specific. And then you kind of have, you will have those moments where it's like, ooh, I want to know more about this, but there's no flexibility in that system. Where in this one, we hope to give you that flexibility to deviate and do additional research, and we'll provide the structure. So yeah, thank you for the questions though. Feel free to ask any more questions, not only about the course, but feel free to ask like anything else as well before we dive into some feedback. So Veer is asking, would the guided track mentors be targeting towards all skill levels? That is something that we have to figure out. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this, and I haven't given this too much thought yet. But the way that we could do it is we could have like different skill levels, right? Where we have a beginner or an advanced track. Where people with an advanced track, we basically skip all the basic stuff, and then we get you to the higher skill level. But we'll see. We'll see, because that is something that we'll have to figure out, and a lot of it is going to come from that initial feedback phase where we have to go through the whole thing and then refine the way that we're going to bring this to people. But it's a very good question. It's on the top of our heads too. Will it be live or pre-recorded? So the course itself will be pre-recorded, and then if you do the guided track, that will be live. So yeah, the current idea is that we have like very small group lessons if we do like the guided track. Like I'm saying, it's going to be a small thing in the beginning. It's probably going to be me taking you through the whole track, right? So there's going to be a lot of stuff that I have to go through before we do that. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think this is really cool. Like if you wanted to learn something, but you're more advanced in other things, you can just go to that one thing. Yeah, exactly. All right. Like we want to give you the flexibility. I see it as a win-win from both sides. So if we give you that flexibility, that also gives us the flexibility to then just be like, hey, look, for example, we had a chat with the person who is currently doing our foliage lesson. And he was like, hey, I feel like I'm going crazy talking about biomes, right? Like I go so in depth and so detailed. We were like, it doesn't matter. We can just make it like an additional lesson. And if you are a person who really wants to know all about foliage, we can just direct you to the biome lesson, right? So that could be like an example of one of those cases where we have the benefit of going like really deep, where other courses, they will have to stay on like the track in the middle, right? Do you think uni is no longer the best for people unless you are really well off financially? So, yeah, this is like a broader topic, right? I think the main benefit about uni these days is that you get like a diploma. A diploma is really, really important if you want to be flexible in where you're going to get a job, right? Because if you want to go to America, for example, it's either get a bachelor degree or like a master's, or get 12 years of experience from the stuff that I've seen online. That makes it yeah, really difficult, right? To not go for a if that is the goal, if you want to go to. Other than that, here's the thing though, like, so to get some context, on what my education looked like, right? I went to uni, so I have like a bachelor degree myself. And I think it is really worth it. But the main thing that I learned from uni was how to really go to the next level, like really push my boundaries, really push my limits, and push myself to the next level. That was the most useful thing that I. Of course, there was like the art skills and all that kind of stuff, but without that drive that uni gave me, I would not be here, right? So yeah, that was like the best thing that I learned from. But there's also the opposite part where I see people going into uni in like the UK, for example, and sometimes it's very scary to see what their end portfolio looks like for the amount of money that they spent on, right? And you can make the argument, yeah, it's a loan, blah 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 blah, but it's still money that, even though it's not directly out of your pocket, you're still saddled with it. And the amounts of debt that people get saddled with for the stuff that they get in return is just making less and less sense to me. Like, I don't know. I had to pay like €1,000 a year to get my degree. If you have to pay like 10 grand a year, that just doesn't make sense to me. Like, and I'm talking about like the UK. Let's not even talk about the US, because those numbers get scary. But at least what they have is, well, or it's debatable whether they're going to have that for much longer, especially in tech, because it's moved around and all that kind of stuff. they had really high salaries to compensate, right? So if you got into tech in like a US based company, um, that would be, yeah, that's a dream. That's a ticket, right? Like it is just like, okay, like I work for like a big tech company now. Like, yeah, I have a lot of debt, but also like if I just save up, like I can pay that off in like low amount of years, right? But yeah, yeah, some good questions. So yeah, it is something. It is also, we want to give people the option, right? High salary in the UK must be a myth. Well, to be fair, I think there are opportunities. I think they are just like slim, you know? You care about a pocket sim and life balance? Yeah, well, so I think the interesting thing is when it comes to life balance, I think you have to go through uni and be in that pressure cooker to kind of prepare you for the industry. I think that's a really good thing. Because it also, like, if that's not your thing, it's totally fine, but the industry, it looks more and more like it's becoming that thing again just because of the pressure. So I don't know, if you're already prepared for that, that gives you some benefit, and at least you know what you're getting yourself into. Maddie is saying, I'm in that situation, 100% agree. Yeah, and I just think, I really believe that we can do differently. There's different mechanisms now. Yeah, there's different mechanisms now. There's different, yeah, responsibilities, and yeah. Everyone is different. I have my family in my case. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's also like, it gives you the flexibility to choose like something that works for you, right? Rather than, oh no, I have to go to school to get a degree, which means that I have to be in school like, I don't know, 6 hours, right? Justin is saying, my advice to those considering going the uni route, look at the graduates' works to see if it's the right place to learn the skills, especially fundamentals. Too many out there give false hopes in the UK. But here's the interesting thing, even though like I used to agree with that statement for the longest time, Justin, what happens in most unis, and I mean this happens in all uni, in the bad ones and the good ones, is that the uni itself will cherry pick people that they're showing off to the outside, right? So they become the marketing material for that uni. So you might even, it becomes really tricky to identify like a bad university on well, basically through looking at the people that come out of that uni, right? It's really difficult to be able to recognize that. Plus also, oh man, I can remember when I was getting to uni, I didn't even know what good 3D looked like, you know? Because I just had no standards. I didn't know what you can make. Like I was like, wait, this is 3D? This is awesome. And I was already sold, right? I mean, I'll speak for myself. I might have just been like a dumb little kid that just wanted to do like 3D. Well, 2D at that point. I do get your point though. And I do also think that it's just really difficult to get like good insights on that and make a good decision based on the people that come out of it. Even though that should be what it is, right? Ideally, if you want to do that type of research, you should be looking at like getting an average of the entire school, right? So go through ArtStation, do a bunch of research, and look at the average that comes out of that school, and that's probably gonna give you like a better indication. It's all part of marketing a business also, to be fair. Oh no, I totally agree. Like I mean, we do the same thing, right? Like the people that make the coolest team challenge, of course we're going to promote them more, right? Like why would you not want to show off like the best that you can do, right? It makes total sense. But it's just, yeah, if you want to attract more people especially, right? Like it does make sense. It is just then that you have to do like deeper as like a person coming. I think it greatly depends on the person, because some people might have a really hard time being disciplined and learning on their own, so uni could be helpful for that. Yep, that's a good point, Veer. That's a really good point. I think I was one of those people as well. So that is a really good point. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it sucked as a student. Like, I went to the shittiest school that they had around, and I even had to double a year in that school because I was doing so bad. Yeah. So yeah, I was that person. But that is really good for bringing that up. That's good. Question: do recruiters really look at the degree, especially if you have a strong portfolio? So, I never picked up my degree because I never needed it. The first time that I actually picked up my degree was when I was applying for a visa to go to the UK. Before that, I've never even seen my degree because it was still in the school archives. So I don't know what that tells you. I don't think diploma has spelling errors. I don't think it matters unless you like I said before, right? Unless you go for like a visa or something like that. An actual recruiter, they might just be like, "Oh yeah, you have a bachelor, that's good." But it's not like you're gaining any leverage on the job. You're not going to get paid more or something like that. I don't think it matters that much, especially if you have a good portfolio. Let's see. Did we miss some questions here? A quick random question. So Falco is asking, do you think it's okay to use plugins on our portfolio projects? Yep. Projects are all over the place. I mean, I use like a bunch of plugins in Blender. Yeah, totally fine. Coleman is saying, yeah, no shame to think tank. It's fine, but it's definitely not specialized in certain areas. Yeah, and I think the difficulty is also with online schools is that if you want to be a school, right, and if you want to be able to offer a degree, you kind of have to do it that way because you get restrictions put on you for the government from the government side, right? Jose is saying, I think I might be behind, but I wanted to say that I'm surprised that you are the kind of person who learned discipline from university because I think of you as being extremely hardworking. Yeah, well, so I think I was always hardworking, and I got that from my dad, right? So I credit my dad for this. Like, he is incredibly hardworking, but he worked. He recently retired, so he's always worked in like a chemical company. And he would do like stuff outside of work. He would like rebuild like people's homes and all that kind of stuff. So he was always working. He rebuilt like our house as well. Been working on it for like 30 years, which is now like their dream home, which is awesome. But I definitely got my mentality from him. It's just whenever you put me in like a theoretical thing that I just can't do it. Like, I need to really sit down and put my brain into it, and it's so difficult to do that sometimes. Where, yeah, especially with uni, like I kind of learned how to learn for the first time ever, I think. Even though it took me like 2 or 3 years, because my first year in uni, I sucked, you know? Like, it was, I think I even had a conversation with my career guide or student guide or whatever, and they said that like, hey, like you're at the back end of the school basically, right? Like at the back end of like the class. Maybe it could be something to consider that you're not going to continue with this. But I think something in me gets triggered when someone tells me to not do something and makes me want to do it more. So I think that was a drive that I was kind of looking for. But yeah. Yeah, I had to learn it through that. Like, it's weird. It is. Yeah. I do like working. It's just like all the theoretical stuff that is just like, ugh. Especially when I'm not interested in it, you know? Oh. Let's see. Did we miss some questions? I don't think so. Not to mention, so many great artists didn't go to uni nor college. People in AAA studios. Oh yeah, I mean, if you look at most of the higher ups in like AAA studios, I would say that most of them just went to school. right? Because like most of that stuff, like most of games, is just like from people's garages. Right? Like they started that company when it was actually them in their. So yeah. My degree is in game design and development, but the courses was all programming, and I hated it so much. So it's pretty much useless right now. I'll find my love for game art after you. You might be surprised though, like how useful that's gonna be in the future. Because I also had to do a bunch of programming, a bunch of mathematics and physics and all that kind of stuff for my uni. And now it gave me such a better understanding on how to do blueprints and potentially make my own game in the future. Um, yeah, so you never know, you know? Even thinking about my high school degree, right? Which is it's basically the art of publications, right? So I was doing folders and flyers and posters and all that kind of stuff. Like even that design thinking like made it so that like the website kind of looks the way it does, right? Or the PDF looks the way that it does because I kind of have those like little things that I took with me, little backpack of skills. But you never know. You never know where it might come in handy again. That is the best thing that uni gives you. My degree was nothing to do with games or art, but it teaches you how to learn and how to apply yourself. Yeah, I think that was really valuable for me as well. It took me 1.5 years of uni until I realized that I had to learn stuff outside of uni to progress. Oh, yeah, they were at our uni, they were really upfront with that. I think the first lesson they said like, "Hey, you'll be in this class for 35 to 40 hours, but we expect you to do another 40 once you leave the class as well." And in the beginning, people were laughing with this. And then all the people that made it through, they all did that. It's just it was not an option. Like it was really intense. Simon Folks is one of the many that comes to mind that didn't go to uni. Yeah, yeah. I don't think, honestly, I don't think that uni is like this big predictor of especially making you a good artist. You know? Like I think honestly it might sort of be like somewhat anti-artists because if you really have that drive to create and then you put them in like a university setting, I feel like honestly a lot of really good artists don't make it because the university system is kind of like rigid in a way that doesn't comply with artistry, right? For the most part. It's really interesting. But yeah, it feels toxic, but being told that I can't do something is the biggest motivator. Yeah. I mean, look, as long as you're aware of it, then you can be, cautious about the potential fallout of that toxicity. But it is for me too, though. Like, there's no denying it. Cool. So we have like a bunch of new people jumping in. First of all, welcome all. We're just doing like a little preamble for the feedback that we're gonna go into in a couple of seconds. But yeah, just wanted to introduce myself really quickly. So I'm Timothy Dries. I've come to like almost 10 years in the video games industry as an environment artist. So if you have any questions about environment art, about yeah, getting into it, making a portfolio, anything like that, feel free to ask the question in the chat. And the academic model is antithetical to the artist mindset. Yeah, there was definitely good stuff that I learned from it, but it's interesting. And now we're gonna go one step further, right? Like octahedron. I I think we're getting to a realization that most studios are being run in a way that is also antithetical to the real artist mindset. That's the way that I think about that too. Which is yeah, let that one sink in. Because we're seeing like a new current of people making their own games and all that kind of stuff and starting their own businesses that are kind of going against the grain, like what we kind of see as like the industry. It's really exciting for me. My uni wasn't very intense, but a lot of people dropped out in the first year. By the time we got to the final year, there were like 10 to 12 people left in the class. Yeah, I did illustration animation, but I really struggled because it was more about the ideas than the art. There's no emphasis on fundamentals and learning art at all. Just about how weird. Yeah, that is weird. Yeah. I dropped out in my fourth year because of that, plus COVID, plus a family member. Sorry to hear that, Charlie. But yeah. Yeah, it's like uni is just one road, you know? Like to like getting into the industry because I've seen so many people making good stuff and then getting into the industry. So it's definitely possible. Damn, uni lore is dark for a lot of people. Well, yeah, like so who mentioned it? So yeah, Justin said like my degree class started with 70 students. By the end, there was 20. Reality kicked so hard for many people. So let's talk about numbers. We started so in first year of my uni, which is like your discovery, right? So you're all bundled together in this single year. We started with between 900 and 1,000 people. I graduated with 16 people. 16 people, I think, between the 3 different majors spread out, right? Which is freaking nuts. Like the attrition rate. Like the school even has a specific exam that is called the Q week, and that Q week is literally there to trim the fat, basically. Like because some people get into like, hey, I want to make games, like this is cool, like I love playing games, and that's all they know, right? And then they get into like the hard reality of like, oh, this is hard stuff. And we also don't have like an entry exam, so everyone gets their fair shake. But yeah, 60 to 70% drops out in that like first exam already. It's crazy. And then it gets even crazier because I think from the people that I graduated with, I think less than half still working games, you know? So it just get whittled down over the years. Crazy. I got unconditional offers from game art degrees too, but I turned them down because I was ashamed to be in. Oh, that sucks, yeah. That sucks. I mean, yeah, it is weird. I never had that because I was dying to be a nerd for such a long time. Because all my friends they I mean, we played a lot of games together, right? So there wasn't real shame. But like all my friends are like in mechanical engineering, like woodworking, all that kind of stuff, in the trades. Reality kicked in hard for me back then. I was even more intrigued to study more. It's such a nice feeling, to be honest. Yeah, it is. It is weird, like how cutthroat it is. I feel that the uni itself needs to foster better relations between people, right? Just in general, that there's like more of a supportive network because not everything needs to be about like, okay, the grind, do more, do more, do more. Because I think that also burned a lot of people out. Only 2 people in my class got into the industry, and even one of the guys left after a year in AAA. Oh my god. Do you think that material art positions might get replaced by AI because it's focused on one specific thing? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think AI is just a tool. We're gonna be working more with it potentially, but currently the market sentiment around it is so negative that a lot of people are actually removing AI features from their games. And I think in the long term, that might like even out potentially, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be replaced. To be honest, I would much prefer like AA to AAA. I mean, it's also part of the current wave, it seems. So a lot of AAA is going through like a really rough patch because, yeah, they got too big for the breaches or whatever you want to call it, right? It's like they overestimated like how good they were going to keep doing in the long term. I think we're kind of seeing the fallout from that. So That doesn't make sense. Rick Rubin said that what makes art interesting is your point of view, and I'm not convinced AI has a point of view. Yeah, that is interesting, but then, and I do agree with that statement as well. But what we sometimes need to look at is that the games industry. I feel like sometimes people forget that it's the games industry where the goal is to push out games that will sell, right? So it is an industry by design where sometimes you have people coming in with the viewpoint of like, hey, we need real artistry. But it is really difficult to marry real, actual artistry with the scale that is needed for some bigger game, right? Um, so yeah, marrying those two is really difficult. That doesn't mean that we can't see like real artistry, for example, in like smaller games, right? I mean, there's so many examples. But marrying the two on like an industry scale is where it gets really difficult. Yeah, I might steal her point of view. Let's see. Sorry, there were some questions from people in the chat. I think I skipped one from 3D. Oh yeah. So, how do I start learning environment art with just Blender and maybe Unreal 4 because my PC is not that good? I mean, honestly, that's all you need. Most of the stuff that I do is Blender, Substance Designer, and Unreal Engine 4. So, yeah, if you want to do environment art, the only thing you need in the beginning is Blender, to be honest. Start learning how to model high to low poly. There's probably going to be like a bunch of tutorials out there. How to bake, how to texture, and then how to get that into the game engine. That will give you a solid understanding of everything that you'll need to know going forward. And then another question from 3D Art. Do you think that material... Oh, this is the one that we already talked about, like replaced by AI. We have another question from video game development. What should I do to start environment art portfolio with limited tools? I mean, honestly, that kind of echoes like 3D Art, like their question. Just the tools will never determine like how good you are, or should never determine how good you are as an artist. Blender's free, and you can do a lot in Blender. You could honestly, if you are really restricted, right? Let's go for the extreme. You have zero money ever, and you can never spend it on anything, and Unreal Engine was not available, right? Let's make it really extreme. You can make your entire portfolio in Blender and still get into the games industry. You could do that. I think AI has potential to help more solo devs a lot. It's the question for a business is, do you risk the potential fallout that you might attract by using AI in your games? If people really care about it, right? So for example, if you do like a supermarket simulator game, no one's gonna care because they know that it's just gonna be like an asset flip kind of game anyway, right? Because people that play those games, I think they just like the simulator genre and they will just like jump in between. If you go for like a more artistic driven game, then there's going to be more emphasis on whether you use AI or not, right? And how you use it. I think there might be valuable ways to use it. If you do it, this is the thing though. Like I feel like whenever I say this, right? I feel like there might be valuable things to use it. But then whenever I do use it, like I feel like it just sucks. Like I try to keep up with these things, right? So, but then whenever I use it, it's like, oh yeah, like it will spit out like 2D images that I can't translate to 3D. Whenever I try to generate something in 3D, it just looks as shit. So I still have a hard time believing in that we're gonna see a time and day where it's just it's gonna happen at some point, right? But like that point is so far into the future that we don't have to be worried about it. I really like to work in the video games industry as an environment artist, but I don't know how long I can wait to get a job because I want a good, successful career, but waiting for so long is too much. How long have you been waiting? Because right now, if you want to get into games quick, it's not a good time. So if you want to get a job quick, don't look for a job in game right now, especially if you're just at the start, because there's a lot of competition right now, and it's gonna take you at least a couple of years to get to the stage where you're good enough, right? It kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about universities, where there's people coming out to university now that have spent 4 to 5 years in university and then have to spend 2 more years to potentially get into a job. There's some pros and cons to that, but yeah. Could it take 19 years until I get an opportunity with just environment portfolio made only in Blender? Well, yeah, you kind of want to maximize for the skill set that you're showing off, right? So only making, I mean, it was an extreme example. I wouldn't go with like only Blender. The benefit is Unreal Engine is free to use, so you basically have all the tools that you need to make it. And then yeah, the only thing that you probably need is Substance Painter. But there are open source or free versions that you could get away with. But if that is the only thing that you need to buy, honestly, that's not too bad. And then you have all the tools. I mean, I also use the same tools. I use Blender, Substance Designer because I do a lot of titleables, and then I do Unreal Engine. That's it. That is it. But yeah, that number that you're putting on it, like, can it take 19 years? It's all about like how good the work is that you produce. Like if you do like kick-ass work, like it can be a couple of months. If you're just in the beginning, then yeah, it's gonna take a couple of years. Not 19 years if you apply yourself consistently. Is the boom and bust cycle a real thing in the games industry? That's a good question. Because like looking at like the macro perspective, right? So looking at my experience in video games, I started 10 years ago. And I feel like back then there was a lot of money coming into the space. And then we kind of saw the peak during COVID. And now we're seeing the bust, right? But I don't think it's necessarily like a boom and bust, as in like we're gonna go back down to where we started. I think it just plateaued to to a level where we were before COVID. It's just the thing that with COVID happened is that it went so crazy with just throwing money at games because everyone was playing games back then. There was so much free money just flying about that yeah, that was just like a massive mistake to like massively invest in like a bunch of people that they couldn't keep for the long term, right? So that's why we're seeing this like current bust cycle. But I would say that it's weirdly, from my perspective, from what I've seen, right? Like when you compare it to movie production, especially when I look at it from like the American standpoint, it was like, hey, we bloat during production and then we shrink after production. That was never a part of the productions that I was on games. But I have the feeling that going forward, I don't know if it's going to be a temporary thing, but I feel like we're going to see more of that stuff happening. So I don't know if that's the boom and bust cycle that you're referring to. Those are some like trends that I can kind of see that are happening. Funny enough, it was watching an old Andrew Maximov. He was predicting things like proceduralism and AI automating and speeding up a bunch of stuff. Yeah, but here's the thing though. Like this is the thing that I look at when people are talking about AI, right? Procedural content generation was hailed to be this like revolutionary, like a massive game changer for games. Look at like how that changed the industry. Yeah, we do use it, sure, and Houdini has become like a bigger part of the industry, but it hasn't been like this massive revolutionary thing where like, oh my god, ride or die, like if you're not using procedural content then you suck, right? I feel like the same is going to happen with AI as well, because right now there's so much money in AI that they have to hype that stuff, and then we're going to settle down into like actually a level where people are just going to be like, okay, like it's kind of good at this but it kind of sucks at this, so I'm just going to do it this way. If you had to swap roles in game dev, what would you want to be? That's a good question. I feel like I've done a bunch of like level design, so I feel like that's a cop-out answer. Maybe something like in narrative design, like purely focusing on the storytelling, like the story of like a full game, like from beginning to end, and like what are the beats, that kind of stuff. I'd love to learn more about that. That would probably be like a thing that I would want to. Yeah, I think so. That's a good question, though. I like that. That sounds fun. Has to be a hard role to get, though. Yeah, I think so. I think so, because it's usually very niche, right? Like, there's not too many narrative designers on the project compared to the level art and level design team. Because yeah, just the amount of content that they need to create, like it takes so much longer, right? If you think about like, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but like if you think about like writing a sentence compared to modeling something, right? It just takes like way more time. Yeah, it always ends up being another tool with its pros and cons instead of it being the next coming of Christ like it's hyped up to be. Yeah, I think so. And there's gonna be interesting things that are gonna come out of it, right? Well, I hope. I don't know. Like, I am honestly still surprised by like how dumb some of the ChatGPT or like Copilot stuff is, where it cannot really do like very niche things, or it cannot really help you with like really thorough searches. So, for example, I was looking up like jobs, right? And I was like, oh, let's see what Copilot does. So I was like, hey, give me a list of 100 jobs that came out in like the last couple of months and link me directly to the entry. And it just wouldn't generate like more than 10 lines. Even though it said like, oh, here's 100 of them. And it's just like, no, it's not. Like, stop. It's just so stupid sometimes. Even if you produce great work in your portfolio, sometimes circumstances can affect the outcome. Studios may love your work, but it may not be what they need in the current project. Oh, yeah. If you want to get a job in the games industry, like, portfolio is king, but that doesn't mean that if you just have a good portfolio, that there's not anything in the way, right? It's timing, it's market conditions, it's luck, it's your personality, it's who you know, it's your experience. Like, there's so many things there. But yeah. Can I get hired with just an environment art portfolio using only Blender? You could, but you have to compensate for. I mean, so here's the thing, like, you could, right? Like, you always can. However, what is going to happen in with a lot of studios is that they're just going to look at your work and then be like, hey, look, we're working in the games industry. We are using real-time game engine. Sure, you have Eevee in Blender, right? But we want to see you work with an actual engine and see the complete workflow. Which, yeah, only Blender, that's going to be tricky to generate textures, for example. So, yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. It's just the texture part. Like, I can kind of make an excuse when it comes to the actual in-engine work, right? So, when you're only using Blender and you don't have an engine work, it's like, yeah, but Blender has Eevee, so it's still real time. But you can't, there's no reliable way to generate textures for you. So, that would be like the biggest thing. Hello all, we just got a spike of new people coming in, so welcome, welcome. Feel free to ask me anything about games art, and we're gonna dive into some feedback in just a little bit because we do need to get that on track as well. So have you used PCG much? Yes. So I converted my medieval scene to PCG. So the biome scattering that I'm doing is using PCG now. Pretty fun. I've only touched it for like a couple of days, but I'm loving it so far. And then Toa is asking, how good should an environment artist be at sculpting? Not necessarily that good. It kind of depends on where you want to apply, right? Like if you want to go to Sony Santa Monica, you better be good at sculpting. If you're gonna be working at like CIG, like 4 Star Citizen, you're not gonna need sculpting unless you want to do like natural stuff, right? Jack Roy, when will it be easy to get into the games industry? Because right now it's hard. I got some bad news for you. It's never gonna be easy. It never was easy. This is an industry that is built on like people's passion, right? The hard thing about that is that there will most likely always be an oversupply of people that want to work on games but are just even, I don't want to say like not good enough, but they just don't have the drive to continue like giving their all for such a long time. But I also don't think that things are going to get harder. I think we're going to shift. We're going to shift from big, dependable AAA studios. Because I feel like that time is sort of over. Like that glass is shattered. And now we're gonna disperse and we're gonna go to a more diverse in terms of like the size and the scale of studios, where like some people are already making up their mind like, hey, maybe AAA is not the thing for me. I kind of want to work in like a AA studio because it feels like that's the perfect balance for a lot of people between that sort of safety net, quote unquote, but also like the creative input that they can have. Yeah. Wanted to ask you something. Did you take a long time to get the high to low poly workflow down comfortably? Yeah. And I think I've forgotten most about it. I mean, I could still do it, but it's just the high to low poly workflow to me has never been fun. It just was never fun. Like I always wanted to focus on big worlds. Like I just wanted to focus on scale and trying to do more things rather than doing single prop. Honestly, high to low poly modeling is was the toughest thing for me. High to poly modeling, baking all. Is being a material artist hard? Well, no. Well, that's kind of like a subjective question, right? Because benefit that you have is that you are really specialized. But like you're saying, like because your iteration time is very short, so you can make like a bunch of materials in a short amount of time. That also means that you need less people on a production. So whenever I work with material artists, there's usually 1 or 2 on a team. That's it. And if you want to be part of those people, you got to be really, really good. So that's why I don't tend to give people the recommendation to go for material art unless you really, really want to do it. Because my fear with material art is that people look at that iteration time, right? Like how long it takes you to actually make a material compared to an environment. And they're like, hey, I'm going to be smart about this. I'm going to make a shit ton of materials and try to get in that way. The issue with that is that a lot of other people are trying to take that shortcut too, and it's also not working for them. So you're in that pool now. I think you have to experiment with a bunch of things and then see what you like the most and then double down on what makes you unique. And that's the way that you're going to stand out. Whether that is material art, organic, sculpting, whatever, right? Mike is saying, I'm a material artist. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, the material artists that I work with, they're fucking amazing, right? Like, it is just, the way that you always need to look at it is the market condition, right? the reason why environment art has so many people gravitating towards it, because first of all, it sounds like, hey, I can create my own world. That's fucking awesome, right? Who doesn't want to do that? But also because we need a lot of people doing them, right? So whenever you see openings in the studio, there's going to be a lot of environment art or level art positions compared to other positions, because you just need more of them. Like, yeah, we have a lot of environment artists on art. What did I learn from environment art? That kind of goes back to what we just said, Jose. Is you need to experiment with a bunch of stuff, do what you like the most, and then double down on that. That will be the thing. Because in the beginning, you don't have any sort of data to decide whether you want to do A, B, or C, right? You gotta try a bunch of stuff and then see what you gravitate to. That's also why I gravitated towards technical environment art, because it's fun and less people. Yeah, here's the thing though, like less people are doing it. That little section there, that's always scary because it feels like you're not doing it because you want to necessarily, but because you feel that it's like it's a better way to get into the, right? Not that I respect, I mean, I don't disrespect the grind, right? It's I get it. Anything technical just makes you more hireable. But then you also, if you become a technical environment artist, you are not going to be doing environment art. That's the whole trap of becoming a tech artist. Like if you are a tech artist, you are just a tech artist. Like a technical environment artist is honestly like a role that is like, it's most of the time not even a thing. Usually the way that this works, right? And I've worked with people like this where they are an environment artist that occasionally does some tech support, right? So they'll make like a little script or they'll make like a little thing, like a procedural thing. That can work. But that is not an official position that you get hired for. It's more like a thing that develops over time because there's a need inside of the studio. That makes sense. Thanks for the advice. Can't I just do everything, or should I just focus on what I like the most? And for me, is material art. If honestly, if the thing that you love to focus on the most is material art, keep doing material art, right? But yeah, you should. If you want to get into bigger studios, you should not try to do everything. Bigger studios want to see a focus. They want to see a specialization rather than a generalist. What's my favorite software to use? It's a difficult one. I feel like my entire suite that I'm using now. So I love using Blender. I love it. I love modeling in it. It feels so creative. I love using Substance Designer. I There's something about it that just ticks my brain. And then I love using Unreal as well. It's hard for me to pick between my favorite children, you know. Yeah, those three. I feel like they scratch a different itch of my brain, you know? So I like to switch between all of them. Keep it very versatile. Good of artists. I've only had experience on it in teams, so you gotta wear multiple hats, I guess. Yeah. In smaller teams, you usually have to wear multiple hats. Also, keep in mind, I've only worked in AAA, so I've never worked in indie team myself. For me, when I say the smallest team, well, I had like a little taste, like an indie. Yes. When I started working at Ubisoft Berlin, there was only 20 people there. So yeah, we kind of had like a little indie taste. One big piece of advice I've heard is that you want to be a T-shaped person. Yeah. I wonder who you got that from. I mean, I don't know where I got that from either. So yeah, like a large specialization in one discipline and maybe some other smaller disciplines as well. Only 20 people in Berlin. Where did y'all go? Valve. There were some people applying to Valve. Yeah, there's one person, like our level designer, Martin Veronings, who is still um who is still trying to get to Valve. I think he's even going back to you. Best of luck. I got that from Elliot over at EMC 3D. Yeah. I mean, I don't know where I got it from, like, originally. Some talk somewhere. It must have been like a recruitment talk from like GDC. But yeah, I agree with that advice. Because that is also a good way of structuring your portfolio as well, right? So that what I want to see, is I want to land on your portfolio, and then I want to see what you're all about on a glimpse, right? If I get confused in the first second that I see your work, that's already not a good sign. So if you go to my portfolio, for example, you'll see it's environment art. It's environment art through and through. It's like I hit you over the head with it, like by design, right? Which AAA games have you worked on? So currently working on Fable. Before that, I worked on Far Cry 6, an unannounced game that is never going to see the light of day. And then another thing that's never going to see the light of day. And then before that, I worked on Jurassic World, Jurassic World Evolution, Planet Zoo, and Planet Coaster. Those are the games that I worked on. And then like a bunch of DLCs, so like Planet Coaster as well. They were really fun. Yeah, Valve's team is really good. I think Valve is one of those companies where you have to be so diverse and so experienced that yeah. Yeah, they're yeah. Just the requirements are insane, but also like it makes sense for a team like that. What are some examples of AA studios? I haven't been able to find any kind of definitive answer for studios. God, that is a fucking minefield, Veer. I mean, honestly, the industry still struggles with that naming convention itself. Like, it can still not decide what indie is because now we have independent like companies who are also like funded by like Nexon and all that kind of stuff. So it gets really muddy. But AA studios is stuff like Hellblade, creators from Hellblade. Their name. It's been a while. The studio that did Kingdom Come Deliverance. Yep. Ghost of Tsushima. See, but that's where it gets weird, right? Like, I don't think they're AA anymore. I think that might be like AAA now. But Ghost of Tsushima, when they were doing that, it was like AA. I guess Frontier at a certain point was AA, and then moved into AAA stuff. But yeah, it's really weird. Larian, see, Larian is one of those weird things where I would call them AAA because they're literally global. They have like so many people working on their games now. They have multiple studios across the world. Rebellion, it gets so weird though. It gets so weird. Because honestly, most of those like companies, I would describe them as like AAA already. Yeah. The benchmark keeps shifting, like shaders is often tech art, but depends on the role. VFX is more likely just a VFX art, but it's similar. Well, yeah. So most of the stuff that you're gonna be doing as like a tech artist is just gonna be support, like tool support, right? For the team. So you're basically the bridge between a programmer and an artist for the most part, right? If we really simplify it. You don't want to take away from the programmer's work, and they're also more embedded with like the actual deep code knowledge, right? Where a tech artist is usually going to get by with like Python and blueprints and all that kind of stuff. A tech artist can literally be anything. Like, I kind of try to simplify the whole thing so that they're the bridge between like programmers and art, because that is sort of what that means. But like you said, it can be rigging, it can be animation, it can be tool support, it can be program support, it can be optimization, anything. It's really hard to pin tech art down. Cool. Let's get into some feedback because otherwise we're gonna keep talking. So let's switch it on over. And feel free to keep asking questions as well in the chat, and then we dive into them. First one up for today, we got a Long Pig. Long Pig is doing the sword. Let me do. Long knife. Really busy with a lot of stuff. Blah 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 blah. At the stand, I started working on the main prop in isolation to avoid overcrowding myself with stuff. That's good. Yeah. I mean, that's what the main focus is going to be on anyway, right? On this sword. So that's good. Long knife. Yes. Mainly looking on feedback for the textures and the sculpt. Oh, the sculpt as well. Okay. And also advice on the presentation. So I added some stuff here, some reference material for the textures, right? Usually what I say when it comes to textures is that you want to have depth, right? You want to have depth in terms of the amount of layers that you're going to have on it. So for example, if we were to isolate it to like the wood, then you have a really solid base, but you kind of have to put in more attention to detail to like the smaller aspect. For example, that's where this stuff comes in, right? Like the oily discoloration that you have on this part of the mesh, right? That will be one layer. Then you have like a little dent. That's going to be another layer. You have like a little scratch that looks different from that dent. This is, you can kind of see where it like stripped away the wood. That is probably going to be more of a scratch. Where it gets darker, that's probably going to be more like a dent. So it bumped into stuff, right? Or it is older. That can also be the case. So yeah, looking at like those little details and how you can integrate them into your texture, that is going to be helpful. Usually what you want to do with like wood is you want to go with like layer 1 is like a subtle base. Then layer 2 would be some color variations. And then with number 3, you can kind of start building up like your stack, right? Like your stack is basically like all your damage where you can have like scratches, dents, oil, all that kind of stuff. But what you want to do is you want to basically break every section into like a multiple layers. So color variation is not going to be one layer of color variation. It's going to be multiple, right? So you're going to go one darker, one lighter, one like in between, you know, like you want to get flexibility to get that randomization in there. Because if you look at this, if we strip away like all the overpaints, we can kind of see that there's a lot of variation in just the color of this. You have these like lighter specks, you have like these darker carvings, have like another darker carving here, and then also there's a gradient because again you can kind of see that like these two sections, you kind of have a subtle gradient where it becomes darker than the rest of the blade, right? Because we're holding the blade, and that is gonna shave away like some of the middle, right? It's gonna get friction, so it's gonna shave those areas away. And that subtlety of texturing is really important. There is still an all-time favorite if you go to ArtStation Learning. I think it's still free. I don't know. Sure about that. But there's a texturing course on there that will teach you all of this stuff. Awesome. Go through that. That will teach you a lot. And then the same can be said about like different areas, right? Like do the same thing on your metal surface. If we look at just the color complexity of this metal surface and the edges and then the dirt collecting in here and these little like dents that you see over here, there's a lot of complexity in what is just like simple metal surface, right? Well, simple. It is once you start paying attention to like all those little details that the whole picture is really gonna come together, right? Same thing here. You kind of see that like the blade has this buildup of layers, right? This cushion in here. You got some oxidization happening. You've got like some leftover stuff, which I assume is going to be rust. And also like all the, I would assume it's polish or something like that. What that is, but like it's kind of crept into like all the crevices. So all those details, they come together to add a lot of depth to. And then the same thing can be said about the metal as well. This has like carvings into it, or just like engraved, but I just wanted to highlight because it kind of see all the layers, right? And like how they affect the blade itself. And again, just trying to break it down in a way where it's like, okay, I can see what's happening. And so the way that I would break this down here is your metal base, which is your base is just going to be a color. It's just going to have a base roughness, nothing special. Then we're going to have the directionality. So the direction, right? That's where like all these like little, like subtle little directional cuts come into play. Cool. And then just to get something in, I'm gonna start with like these bigger, just like random patches of like just damage, right? But I'm gonna make them very subtle because we don't wanna make it look like it's a generator. So it's better to go really subtle with the mask so that it only affects like 5% of the whole thing. And I would rather that you do multiple layers of this. So let's say we do the same thing, we grab a different mask, and then we just put that to like 7%, right? And then we layer that up, maybe slightly change the color and all that kind of stuff, but we're building it up in layers. Very subtle stuff that we're doing. And then over time, as you keep doing that, you're gonna refine the pattern more and more and more, or like you're gonna refine the method more and more. And yeah, and then we get to like some of these spots where it's like, oh, just little specks. And that would literally be a mask that kind of has like a nice darkish brownish color. Also has no metallic because we're trying to get away from like what it reads like, right? That it reads metallic. And then honestly, just grab like a brush and just stamp it, or like clone stamp it, or like apply a decal or something like that, right? I forgot what the word is in Painter, but there's a way where you can mask it in specifically and do that very subtle. We recently actually released a workshop from Abasciani that talked about getting realistic metal to look really good. There's some interesting things that he does in that workshop, so go check that one out as well. There's a part where he textures a gun magazine using the alpha of a gas canister, which was really interesting to see. Just to see how you can use like that data. Yeah. I always go overboard with damage and noise. Yeah, in the beginning, you wanna keep it subtle, and you don't want to do stuff in one go, because that is a thing that is happening here, right? If we were to break it down, that is going to be like a couple of layers, and that is also why it reads pretty simple, right? I do think that the way that you already did your damage and where it's located and all that kind of stuff starts to make a lot of sense, right? So you're doing really good on that side. It's just it has to be like a bit more subtle going forward. Also, just a recommendation, all these images, look at auction sites. A great source of reference. This is just, I literally just looked at the first auction site that came up, and I think it was literally called Swords or something like that. They just have like a bunch of swords that they're selling in like really high resolution images, because these are all from the same website. So go look at that. Really awesome source for inspiration and reference. Yeah. Yeah, Long Pig, like, good job, you know? Already good job. You're on the right track. It's just keeping stuff more subtle and thinking more about like the actual layering that you're doing. Because that's gonna help a lot. Subtle with it. Last thing that I'll say. You were talking about your sculpt as well, right? Try to get some of those areas where you can kind of see that it's not a consistent pattern, but it kind of breaks up. I mean, honestly, you don't even need to go back to the sculpt. You can just do this with your texturing as well. You can do that in Substance. For this smaller stuff, you can easily do that in Substance. Try to get that too. Also, the lighting is ass. Yeah. So, talking about the lighting, metal needs good lighting. I added that in here. Try to get a good HDRI. Because your environment that you're presenting it in is really important for anything reflective. So usually when it comes to this stuff, I would honestly go for like a studio. Like a studio environment. The benefit of that is that they're usually like really well lit. They give you sort of like, it's not neutral, but it's neutral-ish, right? Like it's dependable. Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks, Longpig. I was in such a rush after work to get the whip posted in time. I cobbled the shots together so quick. No, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. It's more than serviceable. Maybe for next week, you don't have to actually post it on the day. You can post it a day earlier as well. So that you don't have to rush home too. McFell, yes, the tutorial that I was talking about was exactly the one from Jason Ord on our station. So that's a good one to check out. Cool. Thank you, Long Pig, for posting your work. Cool. McFell, we're gonna do you next because I see you in chat, and I think we had Lily in chat as well. If there are other people in chat, let me know. Raise your hands as always. And do you. But we're gonna start with McFell, and then no, actually, we're gonna just have a look at Lily's because Lily didn't really want any feedback. Yeah. Yeah, you said it in the chat as well. So don't got any questions, but any feedback would be great. Honestly, awesome progress. I didn't really have anything to say about this other than you can still push like the volumetric fog, right? A bit more. But honestly, you can do that at the end. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep refining the meshes. Add more geometry where you need it to. But I mean, yeah, making good progress. Oh, sorry, McVal. We don't actually allow. Oh wait, hold on, a sec. Let me see. So, give it another try, McVal. Try posting the link in there. Don't know if you can. Hey, there we go. Thanks, McVal. I just made you a moderator. Welcome. Hello, Pierre. Thanks for all the questions. Lovely to have you here. Yeah. Have a nice night. But yeah, awesome progress, Lily. Keep working on it. That's all I have to say, really. Good stuff. Yeah, Charlie's saying this is looking good. Yeah. Yes, Lily is going for a stylized one. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Lily. I mean, I don't really have anything to that. It's just more, yeah. Keep on it. Keep on the grind. Keep refining. And yeah, forward to seeing more. So let's get back to Mechval because I think this one is going to be 4. Look. So, 2 questions. I've tried to create some wear on the flags, especially at the bottom, but I'm unsure how it reads currently. Should I sharpen it to make does it work well currently? Yeah, so we kind of have the stuff here at the bottom. It might be relevant. Here, which I do appreciate. Cool. The only thing that I really had to say about this is that it looks nice close up, but it starts to become hard to read from a distance. So what might be good is that you sharpen it up a little bit, but then also play around with the scale so that it becomes more readable from a distance. Because the times that you're going to see it from this close up, I think are going to be pretty rare. So it's better to get a good read from the mid distance, so that if you have it in a screenshot somewhere, that it at least reads good distance. That's what I would focus. Because yeah, I mean, they kind of look like very, very fuzzy and very frail, right? Even from a distance, because they have that like border to them. But it's one of those cases where we kind of need to sell the effect better than it does in real life, right? Because we have a bunch of restrictions in game engine taking into account. So I would say, yeah, try for a mid distance. And then I think the second question was more about. Oh, let's see. Do you think I should make it so alpha is only 1 or 0 and don't get any sorting issues when they're close to each other? Yeah, potentially. That might be a good idea as well. Because, well, hmm. Um, yeah, I think it might be worth a try. Because, I mean, from this effect, it basically that's the question you're asking, right? Like, is this effect worth it? And I think if we're looking at it like this transparency, if that is worth it, right? And if we're looking at it from like the distance of the actual scene, I think the answer is going to be no. Because now we're in a perfect condition where we're so close to them that it actually makes sense that we can kind of see through them. Yeah. It is honestly, that's a question, right? Like, and that question would probably be answered. That question would probably be answered by just looking at it from like your actual camera angle. You're saying that they're quite transparent in the reference, so I don't know. Well, it's again one of those cases where what are you trying to replicate, right? Like if you're going for like a semi-transparent effect, and if it looks good, then keep it. But if you're running into issues with alpha sorting or anything like that, I mean, there is a box I think like experimental thing. I don't know if that is a video that you made, but there is a checkbox for that could help you. But if you run into any issues, honestly, it is better that it just looks nice and doesn't have transparency compared to having alpha sorting issues, right? Especially if you're going to go for this kind of look that has more overlap between them, which would be cool, but then it becomes more of a concern. Cool. And then the second question is kind of a tech art question. Skip it if it's not a topic. What kind of variation would you want to see flag or line tool? Both for the flags and the poles. It depends so much on like how much you're gonna make with them, right? Because honestly, in productions that I worked on this kind of stuff, I don't mind if it's not even like a tool. Like if I can just say like, hey, beginning and end, and then it just makes like a spline between the two, I am already more than happy. And if I can just like get like, I don't know, a random seed that I can play around with, that's all I care about. Because honestly, for these kind of flags, it is not about the message of the individual flag that we care about, right? It's more about I just want to have something that looks. But feel free to play around with it, right? Because sometimes the density of the flags might be interesting. The scale of the flags, I don't know, maybe basic stuff like that. But honestly, you'll probably have a better idea on that because you're developing it. What country right now do you think is the best for game dev? I want to leave the UK. Oh, Charlie, I got some bad news for you. I think the UK is still like the sweet spot for game dev. Sorry to disappoint you there, buddy. Right, I'll see how much I like playing around with PCG. Yeah. Yeah, it's in your case it's also it's not an issue, but it's like how much do I have fun playing around with this, you know? Because I'm fine if it's like a simple I mean, it is, Charlie. Like, the UK is really good for that. Like, the amount, like, the density that you have in... Okay, I'll give you a simple example. So, I live in Leamington Spa right now. We have more game studios here from a decent size that we have in Belgium. That's just the truth. Like, we don't have, like, a driving, like, mid-sized games industry in Belgium. I mean, most of the studios that I knew were kind of on that track. They kind of got gutted. I mean, there are other studios in Belgium. It's just if Leamington Spa is a hotspot, though. Yeah, that is true. Why is Leamington Spa such a hub for game studios? I think it must be like incentives from the local government. I think. I'm not too sure, not myself. But I mean, Leamington Spa is a hotspot, but even if you go to like Brighton, like you could say the same thing about Brighton. Like Brighton has more studios than Belgium does. Guildford, um, Nottingham. Nottingham has like a couple of studios. Edinburgh has a couple of studios. London has shit ton of studios. I mean, but yeah. So like the density that you get in the UK is just not something that you get anywhere else. Like even if you go to, for example, I lived in Berlin, right? Like moved to Berlin for Ubisoft. But Ubisoft back then it wasn't the biggest. I think Jaeger was the biggest. But there's not a lot of game studios in Berlin. I feel like in London doesn't have too much as you think for its size. Like the UK has a lot of studios in small towns compared to a lot of like the UK has a lot of studios in small towns. Oh yeah, that's yeah. Stockholm has a pretty good amount. Malmo, yep, yeah. I know a lot of companies in Malmo as well. We were actually looking into map of the UK. The map is pretty outdated. I'll say that just to start out with. Well, let me see. Is that a good one? Games map. Let's have a look. Let's deviate a little bit. Because yeah, I think we're done. Thanks for chatting and sticking around, McFal. Thanks for posting your work as well. These flags are looking really good, man. gonna be nice to get some more variation and like getting the wind and all that kind of stuff flapping in them as well. It's gonna look cool. Let's switch it on over for just a second. So let's switch it over to this guy. So you can kind of see, like, I mean, the greater area of London. Let's just zoom out, right? That probably makes it like easier to see. Let's just focus on games companies themselves. You can kind of see, like, this sort of density across the UK. Like, you're not gonna get that anywhere else. I feel like, yeah, sure, like there is like a density happening in like certain areas in certain countries, but the UK is so spread out and has like such pockets that they did a really good job of like fostering the industry. Yeah. Yeah, I feel that's also why we're back here, right? Like the UK has like so much to offer when it comes to games themselves that it is. Yeah. London has more for mobile platforms than console or PC. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's still games though, right? It's still opportunities. Because especially we live in a day and age where, I mean, some people, I would, as a beginner, I would honestly not, I would not be biased towards anything. I would just take any game job. But yeah. Yeah, so unfortunately the UK still has like a lot of great stuff. A lot of great companies that are working here. A lot of good density. That and our unis are the only good thing that we have going economically and maybe finance. Yeah, finance is big. What website is that called? I think it's literally called like Games Map UK. That's the one. Let me so there's a couple of these maps out there. Yeah, but finance is huge for sure. Hello, Marmoset Emperor. Sorry, I missed you there. But yeah. Unfortunately, if you're thinking about moving somewhere else, it honestly might be worth just like leveling up and like getting your first experience or two in the UK and then moving abroad. That might be like the strat to do. Because what you do have in the UK is like this big flexibility around like being able to move around to like another hub, right? So you can use that to your advantage and kind of just work for a couple of companies and then see what the scene abroad is like. Cool. Let's keep it on moving for some of the feedback. So Adam J working on Rock Lighthouse, asking for some feedback on the textures and the materials. Cool. So I added a couple of notes here already. Some really cool algae. Sick on. So I decided to just add that in here because you do have like a paint layer in there already, as you can kind of see. But honestly, it would be sick if we actually have some like meshes on top of rocks, kind of just like covering. Yeah, like these guys, right? You could potentially do that without a mesh and actually make it like a texture that kind of has like some volume and depth. That could be really cool to kind of have as like a tileable material that you just paint on top, or even with decal. And then also more wetness as well, like feeling like the waves are like crashing into this could make a lot more sense as well. So for example, now the tide is kind of like pretty low, or like same-ish comparing to the water, but I would love to see like the tide kind of sploshing in, creating more wetness on the rocks. Because also this works to your benefit in terms of creating contrast, right? It creates this really cool contrast between like the dull in terms of roughness looking rocks, and then you have like this water that creates like a nice shine on that surface. Contrast between those two look really nice. There's also some cool stuff you can do when it comes to like overemphasizing the gradient as well. You have some of that stuff going already, but it kind of goes into the same category as like the wetness. The more you let like wetness affect like the whole surface, the more it's gonna spread that gradient around, right? Because that's gonna erode the colors and make it more. Basically, porous rock will soak up the wetness from it. We can kind of see that like the higher we go, the more they actually get back to their vibrancy, right? That is something that can be really cool to play around with. I like the mood of this. Yeah, it's really cool. You like it as well. And then you have areas like this where you can really improve on the blending of the surfaces, right? Because now we have this really hard edge that we do want to avoid. What you could do is try to blend the material that's coming from the top and just make sure that that makes sense on the middle section as well. Right, especially when you have a contrasting colors. I think going from like the mid section to the bottom section actually looks pretty cool because we have this like white this white layer that comes on the top of it. I think that works. But yeah, watch out for those hard edges that you have. So more blending there would be sick. And then you can play around with like a bunch of like, I don't know, bird poop or whatever you want to play around with, right? Some bird poop decals, like all the seagulls that are just like chilling on the rock. Would be cool. Probably right. I want to travel too though. Yeah, it is becoming more and more difficult for, well, especially for a junior to get a job that allows you to travel either to the UK or from the UK to like mainland Europe. Where before it was really easy to do it. That's how I got my first job, right? But now, because you need to be earning a certain amount, it's really difficult. I don't know. It probably depends on which European country you go to. But it's usually you need to earn at least a certain amount of like the average wage that you get in the country to actually be able to apply for like a. Same for in the UK, right? Like right now, you need to be earning at least 38,000 a year as a junior, which basically means that if you are a junior trying to get into the UK games industry, you are screwed. Because not a single company is going to pay 38k for you as a junior, which, yeah, sucks. Which is on the other end is helpful for everyone in the UK because there's more job opportunity because there's no international competition anymore. But yeah, so that would be something to keep in mind if you do want to travel. Yeah, let me make a couple of notes. So we want more water affecting the rocks. And improve the blending. Yeah. I also don't want to be too disparaging. There's still a lot of opportunities out there, and I think to work in. So, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, going back to your first question, if you want the best possible outlook to get into the games industry and you're living in Europe or in the UK is your best bet. There are some other countries that are kind of making it up and up. From what I can see, Poland has a lot of initiatives. Sweden has a lot of initiatives. Um, it seems like the Netherlands has a lot of initiatives too. Like it seems like they're also getting into the up and up. And I hope that Larian had an effect on like the Belgian games industry and kind of pumped some more lifeblood into that. But we can barely form our own government most of the time, so let alone like more incentives for the games industry. Cool. Let's see. We're gonna switch on over to Dylan. Let's see. During the end of this place, need to do a little bit more set dressing with icicles, decals, ropes, and more gold ornamentation, and then a cleansing pool underneath. Would love feedback on anything that's sticking out. Cool. So I kind of talked about like some of the stuff that you're probably thinking about already. But that would be decals here. So you have like these rocks that are coming into the concrete, but they create like again this like hard edge that you want to avoid. So like blending those two surfaces together is gonna be a priority as well. What you can also do is, because you are indicating with your stalactites that there is going to be moisture and water buildup, right? I mean, I have a river down here as well. What you can do with that is you can also indicate that it's not only on the rock surfaces, but you could have like water dripping from here as well, which could be really cool to add like a stream decal and kind of affect like the whole thing, and it's like a pool down here or something. Those little like decals to tie in like different aspects of the environment are always really cool to do. So basically thinking about like the moisture effects on your improving the blending, moisture effects on your environment, that could be really cool. You can do some like decals of just like spilling out of those tubes. That could be really cool to do. Cool. And then we're gonna talk about like the snow as well. So you can see that I highlighted a couple of sections. Whereas like the snow that you currently have is like pretty much like 0 to 1, right? It is like there's no intricacy to the way that it blends. That's why I added this here. For snow blending. Because we basically go, oh my god, blending? Getting late, huh? So, snow blending. We basically go from like full coverage in certain areas, especially in the ground, to then having the stones be like partially covered. And the way that you can do that is just by having like patches where you have like more flaky snow. That's basically like this in between. That's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about flaky. Then you kind of have these areas around the full areas that are kind of helping with that. And that can also be applied to some of these areas, right? Where you have your basically your snow meshes. What we need to take care of is we need to do a better job of like blending the two together. So again, using the same decals or textures or whatever you need to do, to kind of expand the effect of the snow and kind of do a blend where it goes from like tileable of the roof, tileable from the roof, right? So that's the tileable of the roof here. Then we have decals or meshes or whatever you want to do a transition, and then we go into the full snow. What I also wanted to highlight with the snow here is that it would be awesome if we can follow the shape of the roof, right? Because the shape of the roof has this like nice curve. What is currently missing is that you just added like a couple of blocks of snow on there, but it would be nice that you can kind of give this indication that like the snow kind of just like settled down into the least section of the roof, which now we're thinking about, again, we're thinking about like how the snow interplays with the shapes and the environment, right? And we're trying to make the whole thing cohesive and logical. So that's why having an area like this, and then playing within the crevices as well, could be like really impactful to like the visual fidelity. Just those details like really sell. Because that shows me that you didn't think about like, hey, I want. We basically want to go from, hey, I just want like snow on this roof, to, hey, I really want snow on this roof, and I really thought about like the way that it's going to be landing on that roof, going to be settling down, and how it's going to be sliding off of it, and all that kind of stuff, right? We want to show the effect, yeah, just like the logical sequence of the whole snow like falling into the scene. Yeah, a couple of notes there. More snow blending, more decals. You can do some cool stuff with the moisture effects, and it's just like, yeah, massaging everything. Gonna be seen. So yeah, just that. Cool. But yeah, good stuff, Dylan. Good stuff. And we're going to be moving on to Oscar. So, Oscar, let's have a look. I remember looking at this like ages ago. Good to see you back on this. There's a couple of questions here. So, you're basically saying I'm refining each model of my building by adding detail to each one. It helps me see the progress more. Is this a good way of making the environment, or are there easier methods? So I kind of just wanted to highlight this because this opens up for like a good conversation about like your workflow, right? If you want to see more progress and you're doing it in this way by doing it in stages, right? So I call it like the staged approach versus like the benchmark approach. If you're going for the staged approach, then that can work. There's nothing wrong with either like workflow. But what is going to happen is that you're not necessarily going to see a lot of iterations. So maybe you're seeing a lot of changes to the models now, but you're going to be modeling for way longer than you would do when it comes to the benchmark approach, right? The benchmark approach is basically the opposite, where you just take like one building, you take it to the full production, and then take that to like basically benchmark quality, and then you can just like replicate what you did on all the other buildings. And in theory, what that means is that you've done all the work, and now you just need to the other assets. But honestly, there's no good and bad. Whatever works for you makes the most sense. What I tend to do is I tend to flip between them sometimes. So I'll do like, hey, I'm really unsure about this thing. I'll go for the benchmark approach. And then if I'm doing something that is a little bit more casual and kind of know what I'm doing and I'm very comfortable, I'll go for a staged approach and I'll work in batches, right? But usually I try to get the stress of the question mark out of the way with the benchmark approach. And then once I'm more comfortable, I'll go for stage approach, and I try to focus more on like batching things. Yeah. Slate is saying this should be more modular if it's for games. Well, so that it's an interesting topic to bring up because this could still be modular, just not in the way that the mesh is set up, right? So it could still be a valid way of working, even though you're potentially saving yourself a bunch of time if this was modular. So let's see. Because yeah, it's based on this. Something. It's based on this concept. If you want to replicate this sort of concept, it is really hard to find like modularity in it because everything is supposed to be so artsy and so unique, right? I do agree with the fact that, let's see. No, these are the same buildings. Oh, these are all just the wireframes. Okay. Get rid of all these. Now, see, because all the windows and all that kind of stuff is different, right? So they all have like different geometry, which is where the modular workflow wouldn't necessarily be all that powerful if you want to go for like uniqueness of looks compared to anything, right? So yeah, it is a good topic to bring up, but it just kind of depends on what you want to get out of the. No, it's all good. It's good to bring it up, right? Because these are sort of the conversations that we need to think about whenever we're modeling. So it is good to keep this in mind because your instincts are right? Like if you see a lot of repetition, modularity would make a lot of sense. So 100% right. It's just in this case, it's one of those weird outliers where I feel like you can go modular, but then you would sacrifice the artistic side of things. Let's see. Some other questions. Do the building make sense from a realistic standpoint? Structure and believability. That is a pretty broad generalization, right? So we kind of have to be careful of that. I'm getting a lot of French vibes, right? Is there anything here? Got your phone. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of French vibes. So you kind of want to be specific as possible, right? So go for an old school French town and try to see if it makes sense within that context. You probably have a better idea. Well, I hope that you have a better idea by looking at your references. Right? That's where they really come in. If you have some of those questions, ideally, I mean, you can kind of ask me to verify, right? But ideally, you should just have a look at the image itself and be like, yeah, going the right way. So. But from what I can say, without looking at the references, it does look believable. Right? It does look believable. Yeah, no big concerns from my end on that side. Any additional things that I should tweak? Not necessarily. Not something. It's early in development. Keep working on the models, right? Like make sure that all the proportions are really good. If you're doing all the buildings uniquely, try to play around silhouette. Because this is the benefit. Basically, what I'm saying is that if you are deciding to go with making all the buildings unique, what we then want to do is we want to really double down on the workflow that we chose to do, right? So the benefit of this workflow is that we can really go and make all the buildings as unique as possible, right? We're really playing around with like the silhouette and the shape and the geometry to get the most out of it. Because that's also what we're kind of seeing here, right? It's kind of subtle, but if I were to draw a straight line, I mean, that one is pretty straight actually. But we're seeing some curves, right? Like most of it is very subtle. But we're seeing some curvature, like we can kind of see it here as well. Where like, especially on the silhouette. Especially on the silhouette. Yeah, you can make a lot, you can get a lot of use out of it. That's what I would say. That's the main thing that I currently want to say already. And also, this is more of like a preparation thing, but I think you're already doing that. But I was gonna say, like, plan and test your texturing, like how you're gonna texture things, what kind of materials you're gonna need, all that kind of stuff. Is you want to do that now before you dedicate a bunch more time, like modeling a bunch. This is where it would be good to again go back to like the benchmark method, right? If you want to verify your workflow, get one house, completely texture that in the way that you want to do it, and then go about it that way. Cool. Thanks, Oscar. Gonna be moving along. We've got a weapon, and as you all know, I'm not the best at critiquing weapons. Some of the things that can apply here are some of the things that we said earlier on as well. So when we talked about the texturing of the sword, like really looking at the textures, really trying to squeeze the most out of it, like really thinking about like how you set up those layers, that is going to be really important for a prop like this as well. So let me move about. So we're going to make some notes as we go along. So thinking in layers, more subtle layers. Subtle. Yeah, subtle, but more layers, right? And then you also want to break down the different layers too. We're not going to go into it too deep again, because honestly, most of that is the same thing as we talked about with the sword. So feel free to go back into the recording. That's so more specific stuff to what you're doing though is I feel like you're very careful with your geometry, the way that you use it, which is great. I mean, we do need to be careful about like where and how we use our geometry, right? And how optimized we are. However, we also need to take into account that we're not sacrificing the visual quality to a certain degree where it's really noticeable, right? So for example, a couple of areas like these is where you can really see silhouette, where I can read like how it's modeled. That becomes an issue just from like a visual aspect. We want to basically sell the idea that this is like a real gun and it's not like a low poly 3D model, right? So in areas that need it, we kind of want to add that geometry. Same for this one here. It kind of feels like this is some like really nice like soft grip kind of material. But then because you didn't give it enough geometry, it just feels like a tube, right? So whenever you think that you need like a bit more geometry to make it look really nice, just add it there because I think it's going to be worth it. And the biggest thing here is focus on the consistency of all the shapes in the gun, right? Because for example, This has a lot of geometry. Right? Like these corners, they have enough geometry to make them look like nice and round. But then where you decide to save geometry is on a piece that is bigger and you give it less geometry. So from like a consistency perspective, that doesn't make sense, right? So we actually have topology. Yeah. Topology consistency is really important here. So we're probably going to be able to highlight that. You can tell here you added a lot of geo, and it's good, right? It makes sense that you add a lot of geometry there because it is a nicely rounded shape and it is a nice detail. However, in comparison here, this is just like flat. It just doesn't make sense in context, right? Same here. If you just look at the density, right? If you don't look at, let's actually have a look. Let's see if we can make it nice and clean. Right. So this gives us a better idea. The way that I tend to look at topology is this way exactly. Hey, Long Pig, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your work as well. It's awesome to see. Best of luck. Yeah, like the way that I look at topology is just the density of lines, right? If you want to really simplify it, there's areas where you're like, this is a really dense area. And then compared to here, which is like way less dense, just the inconsistency between those areas makes it read, or makes me think about your decision-making process, right? As in, why did you decide to add a lot of geometry at the top, but not a lot of it at the bottom, right? Even though, from a silhouette perspective, this one is going to be higher priority than this one, because that one is covered by a lot of geometry that's around it, right? So that is something to think about. So yeah, so some geometry / topology. Oh Lord, let's see. Improved. The gun itself looks really nice though. I like the way that it already looks. Yeah. I think in general, if we're gonna take like a high level approach as well, is your materials could use a little bit more. So what I mean by that is that the difference between like this metallic painted body and then like a plastic grip, I feel like the roughness variation between them is not big enough to make it read like one is metal. That could be worth experimenting with as well. What usually reads really well is where you have like those interactions, right? So like this thing is going to swivel around, then seeing the bare metal, being able to highlight that with lighting, that you. Those would be my recommendations. Like I said, Big Mike, this is looking awesome. Great job. Making a gun is not an easy thing. I think you've executed it really well so far. So what I talked about is it's smaller stuff, right? It is stuff that's easy to fix, easy to clean up, worth experimenting with. Great job. Yeah, looking forward to seeing this evolve. Cool. Right, 2 more for today. So Ahmed is working on their mean, first project that I've seen on the server at least. Look. So I started at the beginning of July. Any tips and feedback would be helpful. Just a recommendation for your participation in Whip Wednesday. It really helps me if questions as well. Just like a reminder for everyone. Could be really good to focus the attention in a certain area. But yeah, I just wanted to say, great start. I love the subject, like a 7-Eleven in Japan. Well, I don't even know it's in Japan. It kind of looks like it. I'm just gonna assume it is. Um, yeah, when we go to Japan, well, if and when we go, we want to visit like a 7-Eleven. I heard that the food is great. So yeah, anything with food, I'm all aboard. Cool. So I got a question here to start out with. So if we look at this screenshot, right? My first question is, okay, what is the focus point of this environment? Where are you trying to draw our attention to? That is usually from a very basic perspective. That's usually where I want to start, right? Because from this angle, I don't really have a clue about like where we should be looking and where you want us to look, right? Most of that is due to lighting, right? I think lighting is definitely not bringing out the parts that need to be brought out in this scene. But also there's nothing really in terms of an asset or in terms of composition that is drawing me in to somewhere specific. Right? So that is something to think about. Like, you have to think about where you want people to look and how you can then highlight that. It doesn't have to be like a grand old story. If this is like a project that you've been kind of tinkering with, it is completely fine to just leave the story part out of it for now, even though I do recommend you think about it at least. But if that gets too overwhelming, like, just try to focus on, yeah, if it's the door, right? Like, how do you highlight the door of the store compared to the rest of the, right? Usually we do that by looking at the values of your scene. And a real quick way to check your values is there's two quick ways really. And we do talk about like the two a lot. One of them is by going in black and white. So we are just looking at the values, and the other one would be to blur it. So if we just apply like a Gaussian blur, maybe too big. Right, let's do 20 pixels. Right, so these are two ways that we can do. It's basically a squint test, right? Like, where do we want people to look? So still number one. So this is a squint test. The other one is a value test. What you want with a value test is, if you want to draw attention to something, you basically want to have something that is contrast, right? So let's say there's like, I don't know, let's do a simple contrast thingy, right? So the way that this works is you have something light contrasted by something dark, right? And that is going to pull our attention in to that space, right? That's a quick way of doing it. The same thing works with a squint test as well. We can kind of see that all the values and all the colors kind of just bleed together. We need to have a way that we can make one of those like stand out, right? Like, if we were to translate that person, a character in this scene, it would already work way better. But yeah, just keep check of your values and do like a squint test. Value test. That's gonna help. Yeah, second part is, yeah, lighting needs to be improved. A good tip is, especially because you have physical lights in there, You have really bright lights in here, but they're not reflected by like the light that is coming out of them, right? So there's a disconnect between how bright the actual mesh is, like the emissiveness of the mesh, compared to the amount of light that is coming into the. So there needs to be a balance between it. And usually, if you have a light that is going to affect a lot of it, we need to have a light source. So that's going to be very important. I think honestly, getting you started with that would be a good idea to think about, especially thinking about number one, like where do you want people to look at your scene, right? Like what should the focus point be? And also think about the context of that focus point. Like if it's going to be a character, if it's going to be a coffee machine, if it's going to be the door, if it's going to be a sign, whatever it may be, we need something to like draw your attention. And we can then try to support that with additional assets or with additional lights or whatever, but we need to figure out something that we can actually. McFadden is asking, when doing portfolio work, can you use real life trademarks and brands? Is it fine as long as you don't profit from it? Yeah, usually with that, with those kind of questions, I usually stay with like exactly like you said. If it's not a commercial project, I think it's fine, right? Because you're just doing like, oh, real life inspiration. Like, I just saw 7-Eleven. They're not going to sue you for that. If you then make a game out of it and the game is like 7-Eleven's supermarket simulator, yeah, they'll come for your ass because you're actually making. So as soon as you try to make like any money out of it, I think that's when you're going into the danger zone. Yeah. Thank you, Ahmed. I hope that that's helpful. I'm looking forward to the next entry. Last one for today. We have Sleeper Stakes who came in clutch. Don't forget to add your tag next time. Sleeper Stakes. Let's see. So, do you think the style of these did it manage to get a chat? Megalites? That's fine. Megalites was more like an optimization. I don't think the style is too different. I think it's honestly the style is not only dedicated by the shape, it's also by the materials and the way that you do in the canopy and like all the lights, right? So as long as you're not if you're not changing the shapes of the leaves and not changing the texture and all that kind of stuff, they still feel like they belong to the same family. That's the way that it reads. Canopy shader was a little bit finicky. Apology about using substances. Noticed a little bit after. No, I think you were like right on time. You just forgot to add a tag. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, if that's the only question. No, I think they're fine as they are. They look really nice and consistent. You tagged your work earlier. Double check. Let me just double check because I did have some issues with the automation in the back end today. It was annoying. So let me quickly double check for you. Oh no, you're right. You're right. I thought I saw your name in there. Okay. Good. We're not running over, so we sneak you in there. We can sneak you in there. Let me just quickly get you set up then. Let me see. A lot of images. see what we need to add. Question. I think that's just I think it's just those two. Let's get them in. Because what I usually do, I download like all the images from the thread, like from, well, basically from the entire week, right? So it just dumps like everything in. Yeah, so sorry about forgetting that. Yeah, in the meantime, Sleeper Stakes, like if you're still here, I'm happy to add anything if you need any more help. But like, I mean, if that was the only question, I feel like it's nice and consistent. Cool stuff. Right on, Justin. Let's have a look. So my question for tonight is, thoughts on... Is it much stronger and levels? Like? Oh, you're talking comparison to... Oh, in comparison to this company. This is a piece by Caterina Polari. Freelance art. Share her. Proper credit where we can. Where's my chat? There we go. It's the artwork that we're basing this on. So you're basically talking about like the composition changes, right? The only immediate thing that I don't like is how like this branch just kind of it's just in the middle of the screen, and it feels like it's so intrusive into the whole scene. My gut feeling about this little branch, if you're trying to replicate what is happening here, because the reason why this curve is here is kind of doing the same thing, right? It's trying to point you in. But I feel like the way that it works better is that it's out of the way, and it's at the edge of the frame, where this literally comes into the frame to like kind of push you here. And it's also, it doesn't end here, it kind of then goes up, so you're like, feels too forced, feels too intrusive. Yeah, that is the thing that I do. It's a little bit more forced, right? But there's like a clear distinction between like what the background is and what the midground is. Like everything is like walled off. Where in your case, like there's more openings, which you can still solve that in other ways, right? Like you could have like dense fog, or maybe do some other stuff that kind of just has like the same kind of feeling. I think that could work still. But yeah, just be careful with how you open places up. Yeah, how far you can see. That might be cool. Fuck them off again, but much often the original did much stronger. Yeah, I mean, also what is happening in the company, especially with the, is that we're becoming less focused, right? Where in comparison to, we'll actually do a comparison. We move this one down here, below it. We're gonna see. And we're just gonna do the same thing, right? Let's make this black and white. Same thing. This guy. Right, and we can see what is happening from like a value perspective, right? From a value perspective, this is way more chaotic because we have very similar values happening in the entirety of the scene. So we need to find a way to brighten though. Bright enough. Let's see, highlights. We need to rebalance the scene a little by having less focus in the foreground, kind of getting like that dark framing back in. So that it pushes you more towards the background again. Because otherwise it's kind of going to become like very scattered. We lose that attention center, right? But we kind of want to retain that. And then the same thing with like these other light bulbs as well. You can still have them, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with having them, but we need to establish like a clearer hierarchy of yeah, a hierarchy of the intensity of lights, right? Because the way that this is happening here is like we kind of want to have the focus here. So that makes it so that these three lights are going to be the first intensity. So they're good. And then we kind of look at these sections. They can be at like a number 2 intensity. And then even if you want to still keep like the ones in the foreground, I would make them like really subtle. Guys. Right, so you have like the focus, then you have like your detail lights, and then you have like the lights that are less distracting. Because these are also still lights, but they don't distract from the main area in the composition. So we need to set that up. Same. Because that's going to help with the focus a lot. And that is just tweaking the lights individually, right? Like defining how strong they're going to be. Because yeah, if we apply the same sort of thinking, I mean, you get the idea. So we don't need to do another over here. Pixel is saying, quick grid and scale questions. Do you prefer 1, 10, 100 or the power of 2? For scaling, it makes more sense to go like, well, for scaling specifically, 0.25, 0.1, and then for grid, you would go with rounded numbers, right? So like 1, 10, 100, because that is easier to map to like real world measurements. And then for texture sizes, it's the power of 2. But yeah, let me see. What other questions are in here? Despite the concept being focused towards the level art, glossary, the environmental storytelling I set up visible, or does it need more work? Okay. I mean, I wasn't paying attention to that necessarily. But like a skeleton going on. Mushrooms growing out of his head. So with this kind of stuff, like it is cool that you get this, but then if there's like mushrooms growing out of them, I would do more mushrooms in the entire scene, or I would do no mushrooms on the person, right? Because I feel like it goes into like, okay, like if there's mushrooms growing out of this person, the skeleton, right? I want to see more of that happening naturally in the scene by itself, or otherwise it would just feel weird that it's just replaced, I think, right? Yeah, in terms of other storytelling, I mean, we have like the skeletons here, like the skulls, right? But I'm not sure what we're looking at here. That is a big question mark from my end still. But I do like what's going on with the skeleton. This. So with the skeleton, we can kind of work with that. But I would double down on what is there, right? I would either make it like a couple more skeletons and make it almost, you know, when in like Skyrim, you go to like a bear cave and like, you know, it's a bear cave because there's like a bunch of bones and skeletons already on the outside, even before you go into the transition gate, right? To go into the cave. Like we kind of need to do that kind of stuff. Like we need to ratchet up the attention and kind of have like a bunch of stuff already happening so that by the time that we get here, that we're like, oh, okay. This is basically the cause to the effect of this, right? We want to see like the action and the consequence, basically. So people go in here, it's like a big test for, I don't know, freaking manlyhood, or it can be like a bounty that has never been claimed or whatever, right? And then we see like a bunch of hunters from like different classes, different weapons, and they all go in here all to die. But we kind of need to see, or we kind of need to get like a good indication that this is like a den of some sorts, right? Because that's also what's happening here, where it's like it is a hole. Like we don't know what is in here, right? Whereas with this, I feel like that might still be on the plan, right? But we want to emphasize that this is like just like a hole or a den. It could be a creature like that, or you could get like you have these like cool trapdoor spiders, which basically you could almost have like a trapdoor, and then you just see like the webbing, you know, so like the whole place is like covered in like spider webs. So you see like you get a glimpse of like a trapdoor that is like slightly open. That could also be cool. There's some cool stuff that you can do with that. But yeah, it's thinking about like, okay, we're seeing skeletons. What caused those skeletons? Right? Like we want to build a connection there with those two things. Yeah, a quick recap. So we've got cause and effect in the story. And then the first thing we talked about, confusingly, too, is just the focus of the composition. So, and that comes through lighting, but also just from the composition itself. The composition, I'm not too worried about because I think you've chosen a nice piece to work with. Nice and condensed, which is awesome. Um, the blockouts do make it ambiguous, but you are correct. Hopefully when I get the proper assets. Yeah, because at this point, I don't really know what's happening here, right? And also, like, it's not even about like how finished the blockouts are necessarily. It's about like even at this range, like if there is supposed to be a hole there, we need to emphasize it more than it is emphasized currently. Because even this might be this might be a space where you go down. But if I can't see that that's the case, then I don't know that that's happening, right? So we kind of need to emphasize that this is like a tunnel, and we can kind of emphasize that by, you know, like having like root structures coming out of here, and kind of just like leading you into something that looks more like a tunnel and goes down into like a deep dark depths, right? Because even, I'll be honest, like even in the blockout stage, if you want to make like a tunnel or something there, that should already be visible. Like we should be already seeing. Yeah. I mean, it might be like you said, like it needs tweaking, right? It needs some iteration, but it's already really cool in terms of the shapes, though. Like all the shapes that are going on, something really cool going on with the shapes. I really like the way that it's kind of like this Blair Witch project, like kind of thing happening, you know, in terms of like the shapes, like how chaotic they are. Yeah. Cool stuff, Justin. Thanks so much for sharing. Yeah, great stuff, man. Cool interpretation of the concept as well, and I think you picked like a good starting point. Just a good scope of the scene too. All right, Slate, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sticking it out for the entire thing. And yeah, thanks. Thank you for showing it as well, Justin. Appreciate it. Right. Thank you all for being here until the end. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for everyone for sharing their work as well. We're not going to make it any longer than it needs to be because I am pretty tired. So I'm going to take a little bit of a rest, a shower, relax a little bit, and then we'll see each other next week or in our community. I'd love to hang out. So see you later. Have a nice evening and speak to you. Bye-bye.